Hi, I'm Chad with Moveable Guitar. This lesson is from our series CAGED Theory. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about Triad Arpeggios. First off, if you like all the diagrams for this series, including the diagrams for this lesson, you can download our free e-guide, CAGED Theory. But I am working on it as I'm filming this lesson, so it might not be available as you're watching this lesson. If it is available, a link will pop up on the screen that'll allow you to download it. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to download it when it is available. This is part 15 from our series, CAGED Theory. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So I think the next step in diving deeper into the CAGED system would be learning about arpeggios up and down the fretboard and how you can use the CAGED system to visualize that. And if you don't know what arpeggios are, I recommend you go back and watch our series Music Theory for Guitar. I dive into that and much more. You'll get everything you need to know about them and how to use them. So definitely watch that first if you don't understand what arpeggios are. But just really quickly, an arpeggio is all the notes of a chord played in order like a scale. So right now we're going to talk about triad arpeggios, and then in the next lesson we'll talk about 7th chord arpeggios. Triads are built with a root 3/5. A major triad is a root major third perfect fifth, and a minor triad is a root minor third perfect fifth. So you would just take those intervals, root 3/5, and play them in order anywhere on the fretboard, and you end up with a triad arpeggio. So it's just all the notes of the chord, but it's played in order like a scale. And arpeggios are really helpful for soloing, so this is a way that the CAGED system can really help you in learning how to solo and becoming better at soloing. And the CAGED system helps you visualize where to play these arpeggios. You can play these arpeggios anywhere on the fretboard as long as you play them in order, like I said, root 3/5. But the CAGED system will give you a way to systematize your fretboard so that they're easier to visualize, and these will fit within the CAGED shapes. And these are not all the shapes that you can play. Like I said, you can just play them in order anywhere on the fretboard, but these will give you ability to play these different shapes up and down the fretboard, and eventually you'll be able to connect them and just be able to visualize them a lot easier than if you were just to learn them randomly up and down the fretboard. This helps you fit them within the CAGED system so that they're easy to visualize and use. So I'm just going to go through all the triad arpeggios in all the CAGED shapes. So we're going to go through C, A, G, E, D with major and minor. So I'll just start with C. This is the C major shape, and we're not worried about what key we're in. We're not worried about where our roots are landing, what note that is. We're just looking at the shapes right now. So this is a C major shape from the CAGED system. Really, you could play these notes in order, root 3/5, root 3, and that would be an arpeggio right there, a triad arpeggio. But you can add the notes around it that will make it a fuller arpeggio, and it would look like this. So now you still have that C shape in there, but we've added in these notes that are close by so that you'll have a fuller arpeggio. So if you were to play this, you could play root 3/5, root 3/5, and then if you're going back down, you could go 5/3 root, 5/3 root, 5/3, and then go back up to root, so 5 root. And that would be a good way to play this arpeggio. So now you're able to visualize the C major CAGED chord shape and see an arpeggio, a full arpeggio from the 6th string down towards the 4th to the 1st string that fits around it. And we can do the same thing with minor. So here's a C minor shape CAGED chord. Again, you could play this in order and you'd end up with a small arpeggio. You'd have root, flat 3/5, root. But we can add in the notes around it, the flat 3s and 5s, and it would look like this. So now you still have your C minor shape, but we've added in these flat 3s and 5s around it that are easy to reach that surround this chord. So now you could go root, flat 3/5, root, flat 3/5 on the way up, and then back down 5, flat 3, root, 5, flat 3, root, 5, flat 3, and then back up to root. Or another way you could play this is to move this flat 3 to its unison note right here. And again, you just have a C minor shape arpeggio. Hopefully you can see already that just by taking the CAGED chords and visualizing where the extra notes are around them, it's easier to find these arpeggios and to memorize them because they're all based around these shapes. Instead of just finding them randomly up and down the fretboard, you can use them with the CAGED system, and I think it's a lot easier to be able to visualize them. So the next chord is A. Since we started on C, now we're on A. This is an A major shape. This one actually wouldn't be in arpeggio because we're going from root to 5. We need a 3 in between those. So we can do this and add the notes around it, which is just another 5 and a third. Now we would go root 3 5, root 3 5, and then back down through order all the way down to 5, and then back up to root. So now you have an A major shape arpeggio. You can visualize the A major CAGED chord within this arpeggio, and you're just adding these 2 extra notes to be able to play it in order and get from the 6th string all the way to the 1st string. You can do the same thing with A minor. Again, this isn't an arpeggio by itself because you don't have the 3rd in there between the root and the 5. So if we add those notes in, we can put the flat 3 right here and then just play it in order and then back down to the lowest note and then back up to root, and you'd have an A minor shape arpeggio. Next one is your G shape. We've gone through C and A, now we're on G, starting with the G major shape. This one you have an arpeggio up to the 2nd string, which is root 3 5, root 3, but then from your 3 to your root, you need a 5 in between there. So that's really the only note you'd need to add in to make this a G major shape arpeggio, and then you can go root 3 5, root 3 5, root, and then back down all the way, and the lowest note would be your root note that you end on. So that's one of the easier ones to visualize for making it an arpeggio because you're only adding that one note in. And the same thing for the G minor shape. You have root 3 5 root to here, but then you need a flat 3 in between the root and the 5. So you could add that in right here. So then you'd have a G minor shape arpeggio, and you could play that in order up and down and just land on the lowest note, and that would be your root note. Now we're on the E chord. We've gone C, A, G. Now we're on E. So here's your E major shape CAGED chord. This isn't an arpeggio because of the root to the 5. You need a 3 in between there. So all you have to do to make this into an E major shape arpeggio is to add the major 3rd right there, and now you can play it in order all the way up and back down, and then you just end on your lowest note because it's your root note. Or some people actually like to play their major 3rds up here and add them on both strings so it would look like this. That's just a bigger stretch, but a lot of people do like to play it that way, which when you play it this way, you're moving up the whole time instead of going back to your 3rd here. So it's just a preference, and eventually it's good just to learn it both ways. And then here's your E minor shape. It's not really an arpeggio right now because your root to the 5, you need a flat 3 in between there. So the easiest way and the most common ways are just to add your flat 3s here, and you end up with a really nice shape for an E minor shape arpeggio that you'd play in order, and then back down, ending on your lowest note. And if you know your minor pentatonic, you probably see that this is really close to that shape. You're just missing some notes in here, which are your perfect 4th and your minor 7ths. But you can see that shape is all right there. So now we're on the last chord, the D chord, and we're starting with major. So here's a D major shape. This isn't really an arpeggio because you have root to 5 right here. You need a 3 in between there. So you can add the notes in, and you could add your 3 right here. So you'd have root 3 5, root 3, go back down all the way to this 3rd on the lowest string, and then back up to root. And you'd have a nice D major shape arpeggio. Or another thing you could do, another way to play this is to move this 3rd up to its unison note, and it would still be a D major shape arpeggio. And then same thing with D minor. That's the D minor shape. Add in the notes, and you'd be able to play everything in order. Root flat 3 5, root flat 3, and then back down. You'd end on the 6th, go to the 6th string, and then go back up to the root to end. So if we were to look at this on the whole fretboard, if I put them in the key of C, here's all the C major CAGED chords, and hopefully you can quickly visualize where they all land. That's C, that's A, that's G, that's E, that's D, and then you're back to C an octave higher. We're just adding in those extra notes so that we can play each one of these up and down through all the strings, and so that we're always playing the notes in order, root 3 5, root 3 5. So this would be your C major arpeggios up and down the fretboard. And if you were just to look at these arpeggios randomly and not be able to visualize the CAGED system, it'd be a lot harder to know where to start, because really you could play these in any way on the fretboard. You go root 3 5, root 3 5, root 3 5. I mean, that's an arpeggio right there. But when you break it up into the CAGED system and visualize the CAGED chords within these, it's a lot easier to systematize your fretboard and quickly be able to visualize these different shapes. Then you can do the exact same thing with the minor chords. These are the C minor CAGED chords. Just add in those extra notes so that you can play them all in order and on all the strings. And then again, you just visualize your minor CAGED chords within these arpeggios, and it's a lot easier to find them on your fretboard. So that's how you can use the CAGED system to find triad arpeggios. Go ahead and move on to the next lesson where I'm going to show you how you can do the same thing to find 7th chord arpeggios. And be sure to download the e-guide. All the diagrams are in there, and be sure to subscribe because we had at least one new lesson every day.